Hey everybody, my name is Jessica Porter, and the research article I'll be presenting today was done by Brian H. Friedman, Luther G. Kalb, Benjamin Zabolski, and Elizabeth A. Stewart, and it's called Relationship Status Among Parents of Children with Autism Spectrum Disorders, and it's a population-based study that was published in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders in volume 42, number 4, and can be found on pages 539 through 548. So, there's been a large body of research that suggests that raising a child with an autism spectrum disorder, or ASD for short, is a uniquely stressful experience for parents. And the demanding nature of parenting a child with ASD can be particularly stressful to the parent's relationship, causing a significant decrease in marital satisfaction. So there's been limited studies that have been conducted to identify if a child with ASD increases the risk for separation among their parents. And there's been much speculation that there might be a correlation between the stresses of raising a child with ASD and the separation or divorce of that population. To back up this assertion, though, there has been little data collected and absolutely no research conducted on the issue. For that reason, it's unclear, or it was unclear at that point, if having a child with ASD increased the risk for the separation of that child's parents. The purpose of this study is to distinguish if children with an autism spectrum disorder are at an increased risk for living in a household not comprised of their two biological parents or adoptive parents compared to children without ASD in the United States. And the research question that they answer throughout this, or they try and answer throughout this article is there an association between having a child with a current autism spectrum disorder diagnosis and the relationship status of their parents? The hypothesis of this study is that a child with the diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder might cause issues within the marriage of his or her parents, which could ultimately end their relationship. The data used for this study was taken from the 2007 National Survey for Child Health, and in that survey they used children between the ages of 3 to 17 years of age, and the final sample size that they ended up was 77,911 participants. And the way that they conducted this study was through a 4-stage modeling approach, and it was employed to investigate the relationship between ASD and marital status. The first model controlled the demographics. The second added in additional marital characteristics, and the third model included socioeconomic indicators. And finally, the fourth controlled the other psychiatric disorders. So the outcome variable, the family structure, was characterized as either being traditional, with having two-parent household, either biological or adoptive, or non-traditional, with a two-parent household with step-parents, or a single mother or father, relatives, or any other family types. So this first table presents weighed and unweighed descriptive statistics of children with and without a current ASD diagnosis. I know it's kind of hard to see because I kind of had to stretch it out to fit the screen so that you could see it better, and I don't know if it made it better or worse, but in any way, basically what this table indicates is there's no association between a child having an ASD diagnosis and whether or not the child lives in a family consisting of two biological or adoptive parents compared to a family consisting of single parents, step parents, or other types of households. And then table 2 is just more in-depth descriptive statistics that back up what table 1 explained, and that's that there's no association between having a child with ASD diagnosis and whether or not the child lives in family consisting of two biological or adoptive parents compared to a family consisting of single parents, step parents, or other types of households. So table 3 describes if there was an association between ASD severity levels and living in a household with two adoptive or biological parents. So in the study, there were 913 participants who were diagnosed with an ASD. 419 of those diagnosed were described as having moderate to severe symptoms by their caregiver. Of that, the remaining 494 children were described by their caregiver as having mild symptoms. The remaining participants were not currently diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, and of that there were 76,998 children. So the results were somewhat unstable because of the relatively small sample sizes. However, there was no statistically significant association between ASD and belonging to a two biological or adoptive parent household for any of the symptom severity groups across any of the models, or any of the 3 that I described anyway. So to go over the results, the first 3 models indicate that there was no association between a child having a current ASD diagnosis and their family structure. The 4th model, which there was no table to show you guys, but it compared children diagnosed with ASD to children diagnosed with other psychiatric disorders. And it actually produced rather interesting results. A child with a current ASD diagnosis was slightly more likely to live in a two biological or adoptive parent household than those without ASD. So, is there an association between having a child with a current ASD diagnosis and the relationship status of their parents? Well, from the first 3 models, there was no association. And then the 4th model that compared children with ASD to children with other psychiatric disorders, there was an association, and it was just a little bit higher % of them living in a two-parent biological or adoptive parent household than those that had other psychiatric disorders. So the discussion questions that I came up for you guys are: what factors do you think contribute to the results of a child with a current ASD diagnosis being slightly more likely to live in a two biological or adoptive parent household than those with a different psychiatric disorder? And the other question is, are the results of this study surprising to you? Why or why not?